Luke here from Artistic Coffee. Today we're going to show you how to put a plumbing kit into a Linea Mini home machine.
So you guys do them coffee machines fairly often, right?
This kit has everything that you need to be able to convert from the inbuilt water tank to run to a mains water supply, have a drain that can take all your waste out of the drip tray, and giving you a constant water supply that's filtered, which is going to really look after your coffee machine. Those key things allow you to use this machine all day, every day, just like a commercial machine, and not have to worry about what's going on with the machine. Having filtered water is so important with the coffee machines, and this way you know that it's going to be an uninterrupted supply of quality water. So I'll just show you what's in the kit. You got your guide. It's really good. If you're going to do this at home, it tells you about all the tools and everything step by step with great photos how to do it. So don't lose this when you get it. You got a drain hose. That's long enough usually to get you where you want to go. We've got a water inlet hose as well, so that's going to be an adapter from your mains water. Usually we're going to be underneath this sink where that's going to connect to. And then a whole range of little goodies here that we're going to need to be able to put it in place. So the key thing about a Linea Mini, when it has a water tank inside, it's got a few sensors that allow it to understand whether that water tank is full or empty. When it's empty, it's going to turn off the machine and stop it from trying to work so it doesn't run out of water and break your machine. So we need to bypass that. We need to, by removing your water tank and then putting in some bridging pins to stop that switch from working. Then we have to disconnect the water line from that tank that runs to the pump. And then we're going to be replacing that with the hose that actually goes into your mains water system. So it's a little bit of a tricky process. You're going to give yourself a bit of time to do this. I'd say about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. And you want to be really delicate when you're pulling this machine apart. It comes apart easily, but you've got beautiful finishes on here that you don't want to scratch. So take your time with it. Get yourself a nice workspace before you tackle this project. So this little manual does tell you how to do the whole process, and it's got great little photos telling you step by step what's going to happen. So if you're not sure, make sure you grab this manual and run through it. So I'm just going to do the first couple of steps really quick and easy. We've got our water drain, or our reservoir essentially. It's got a little grub screw on the back, so you just need to remove that. It's quite easy to come undone. Obviously that's in there so that it becomes a bucket when you don't use this kit. Put that aside for safekeeping, you never know where you might need it. Then there's this brass fitting, and it's just, we'll put a bit of thread tape on there. We're going to insert that. And then give it a little tighten up. It's plastic on brass, so don't go too tight, just a bit of snug, and that tape's really going to make sure that it keeps it from leaking. So the other part to it is your drain hose. Now it's got a barbed end here. It's a simple push fit with a hose clamp. Slide it on down. Okay, and tighten that up. This design's actually quite smart. In a commercial environment, we would normally be taking this hose and hose clamping straight to the tray. But they've thought about it, and you can now remove the tray, which is quite handy because there are these two fittings which you're going to join together. Now they're quite loose to start, so that's why you've got to get your O-rings and pop them on. There's 3 of them. Okay, and then that'll allow you just to push it on. Now you can see that's quite dry, so it will go on, but what happens with O-rings is they will actually roll And we don't want them to roll because that'll create an air gap. So just get yourself a bit of silicone food grade grease and just lube those up a little bit. If you're at home and you didn't have any of this, you could use just a little bit of oil or something like that. Veggie oil if you really had to. And that'll allow you to push that on nicely. See, nice and easy. So once that's in, essentially you can just pull it out and pop it back in again. That's a really cool idea. So we need to remove the water reservoir. Now, I've already done it, and I just wanted to show you a little trick. It's very hard to get that off, and this is in the way when we're trying to move forward with anything. So the little trick is get a flathead screwdriver, sneak it in and underneath to create an air vacuum, and then that will allow you to simply lever it and pull it off. But don't drop the tub. It's in one piece, so that's good. So now that we've got access here, the water reservoir isn't in the way. And the way this works is you have a look on the back of our water reservoir, we've got a positive and negative metal strip. It's a switch. And if you have a look back here, you can see where they're going to be touching to these two different springs. So essentially there's an electronic current coming through here. As long as there is water in between these two probes, it's going to say to the machine, we've got enough water to activate the pumps and not burn out the elements. So all we're doing is taking this bridging pin across the two fittings to join them together so it never runs out or never thinks it doesn't have water. So it's a very easy little screw, pop it in the middle, and might better get this shot, it's pretty tight. And we're just going to screw that in place. So you can see over here, there is a metal plate now that's joining the two together, and the machine will now know that it's got water. And that's going to happen on your top of your machine. You're going to see this little gauge, it's not going to flash at you, it'll be solid, and that'll mean that the machine is okay to heat up. So all the tools that you're going to need for the job are here on page 7. A couple of different spanners, a flathead, and a Phillips head screwdriver. So I'd recommend when you start pulling something apart, just grab yourself a cup or some sort, put all the screws in and try and think about where they're going so you don't lose track. Or you could also get a piece of cardboard, and every time you take a screw off, you just push it into the piece of cardboard, and then there's a space for you to write a note, you know, front, left, front, right, whatever you want to do. So just a handy little tip for you there as well. So let's get into it. We're going to remove the top tray. If you can't grab it with your fingers, you can pop a little screwdriver in there. Pop that out the way nicely. We're going to need our Phillips head screwdriver, and we're going to have to take a few screws off the top here. And now there's actually two either side at the back here. So they're the main ones that hold everything down. And there's one funny little screw which I'm going to show you in a second, because you may think that you're losing the plot when you undo it, and it's not coming undone, but you'll know what's happening afterwards. You're actually unscrewing it from a block that's underneath the machine. So I'll show you that one now. So just down here you'll see this screw, and you think, hey, it's just straight into the top of the machine, but as you actually undo it, you're actually undoing it from something that's connected underneath. When you take this off, you'll see what I mean. You've got a main brain here, so there's two screw holes. This one is actually exposed, okay? And you can see by this hole, you don't want to undo that screw, otherwise you're just going to drop your brain straight into your machine. You actually want to undo the one at the top on this side, and that will just allow that to loosen and remove the top. So just a little trick there for you. So this part is probably the fiddliest thing you've got to do, and the thermometer, or the thermostat for the actual controller of the front boiler is underneath the side panel, and it actually stops you removing the rear of the machine. So it's a bit fiddly. I'll point out what we're going to do, and then we'll give it a go and show you how it comes off. So if you can have a look right down in here, you've got these two screws here coming out. They're actually welded onto the chassis, so you need to undo this nut and this nut. It's a 7mm spanner. It's really tight to get in there, but we have to get them off, and that'll allow this bracket to come out. And you can see the wheel here, which I'm turning, which is the thermostat dial. That'll allow us to get it out of the way to then remove the rear part of the actual the surround. Okay, so with this, there's two bolts and nuts on it. You do need to remove the first nut totally off, but the second one, you just have to loosen it, because you'll see there's actually keyways here that allow you to slide this whole mechanism out. Now that's out the way, we can easily remove the rear chassis of the machine. So there's two screws here and here on both sides. By undoing those, it's going to allow us to separate the white chassis from the actual stainless steel here. So quite simply, a little flathead screwdriver. Just take your time. You know, these machines are really nice and pretty, so you don't want to slip with the screwdriver and scratch your chrome, or scratch some of this beautiful coloured paint if you've got it as well. When you get to this point and you're going to remove the chassis, the main CPU brain is actually connected to the chassis still. So get your hands, hold up that CPU brain. You are going to have to undo that other screw, and that'll just gently fall down. Okay, be very careful of that, because there are exposed wires and really expensive parts in there that you don't want to knock. So just let it sit there nicely, and then we should be able to just remove this beautifully. No. Why? Why? So there's two more screws you've got to get to. They're a little bit fiddly. Try and get your longest Phillips head screwdriver you can. They are down in the back corners, and you just need to loosen them, and that'll allow the chassis to slide off. Very hard to put on the camera, but they're in the bottom right hand side, and you should be able to see them. This one's directly underneath the pump fitting. They're not that tight, because they actually are quite hard to get to, so someone wouldn't be able to do them up too tight. And the one on this side is right next to the bracket on the edge of the chassis where the pump, electric side of the pump actually connects. Just a couple of turns on those, and voila, nice and easy. Just give it a little bit of a bend around a few of the fittings here. Check your wires, that's just got caught on the element a little bit. Nice and gentle as you work your way off. There we go. We've got our rear cowling off the machine. And this is where we're going to be working from now. We're looking at where the pump is and the water that comes into the machine. So you can see where we've pulled out our water hose, which went down to your reservoir. And you'll see that this comes all the way down to the inlet of the pump. So we're going to remove that whole section. Just crack it. A bit of water might come out from the hose, which is fine. So now you've got that off, look at your hose. There's actually two different ends on this. This is designed to go to your water inlet from your wall, and this is designed to go onto your pump inlet. It's a little bit tight, so just going to have to bend it a little bit and just get it on line. Make sure it's nice and straight. There we go. And you should be able to just tighten that up. Okay, to test that these fittings are good, if you can turn that or it's wobbly at this point, it's not a sealed fitting. So that's how tight you need to go. Not crazy, just nice and snug. We're going to have to now feed this back through the machine so that when it comes out underneath the machine, so we can plumb it in essentially. So let's work out the best place for that to go. So underneath the pump there, you can see where that hole allows you for that hose to go through. Just thread it through. And we're ready to go. One thing I'll point out is I've actually just looped that over the top there, and sometimes these pumps do vibrate a little bit. So if you do this process and you hear a vibration, usually it's just one of these hoses actually touching the chassis or something else. So give it a bit of breathing space if you can, and that'll help reduce the noise. And if there was anywhere that you could cable tie that to, so that you don't pull on this too tight, that would be a good recommendation as well. At the moment I can't really see anywhere particular that I'd do that, so I might just actually cable tie that nice and firm on there, just to ensure that we don't get any movement. Alright. Just trim off any excess as well. Okay, so now we've got our hose out, we've got our drain ready, we've already fixed the switch, which will let the machine know that we've got water supply. Now it's a matter of putting it all back together. You can test this now if you really wanted to, but if you're not technical, I'd advise putting it all back together first, just to be safe, before you start to turn it back on again. So this particular machine, we're going to be bolting it to the bench in Chris's caravan. We've got a few markings on there, so we'll have to drill some holes into this chassis rail so that we can bolt straight through his timber bench and have some nice secure fittings so that it doesn't fall off the bench and end up in the bottom of his caravan as he's travelling down the road. So what we're going to do is reassemble this now. We've just got to be a little bit careful, obviously with our CPU brain, try and get it up out the way. And we're going to be very, very careful in fitting this back on. We don't want to scratch anything. We're going to take our time and just try and light it up nicely. And inside here there's those two screws that we undid earlier. So just making sure that I'm just sliding underneath them. And that lines up beautiful. Got my little crate here. Okay, so we're going to tighten these two up underneath. So we're going to reattach our CPU brain. So there's one screw that we use, which was the Phillips head screw, to secure that brain in place. Just fixing that wire there, it was just caught on the chassis, which we don't want to do. Okay, now we have our thermostat controller, which we've got to try and get in, and it was a little bit tricky before, so I'm just going to get my little nuts and put these on. This is the 7mm spanner that you'll need to get that back in place. And it goes back in this way, so we've got to make sure that our wires are up the top. This is going to slot back through inside the channel that's cut out on the side panel of the coffee machine. And there we go. Now I'm doing that before I've actually attached the chassis, and it just gives you a little bit more room to move. Get our little 7mm spanner, which has just gone astray. 7mm. Try and do them up as tight as you can with your hands first, certainly makes it a lot easier. Okay, 7mm, and give those a bit of a tighten up. Now, these weren't overly tight to start with because they are quite fiddly. It's not a super structural requirement for them to be really tight, so just do them up the best you can. I wouldn't worry too much because that bracket is actually already slotted in over those screws. So we're just really trying to keep it in place. There we go. That feels nice and snug. So we're going to turn it around again. And the flathead screws are the ones that go into the front panel and then lock into the side chassis here. Now I'm just going to line them all up, the 4 of them first, before I do them off tight. Got it. And another drop. Okay. Now one thing I've just realised is there's actually a little locating pin just here on the chassis which hasn't lined up. So I must have missed that one when I was pulling them in. So I'm just going to tweak those back out again. Alright, so now we've got it all aligned. That's actually a little bit tricky. There's a couple little pins down the side you've got to get in place as you're sliding it in. But then at the back you've got to make sure that you're under the 2 screws that we've undone in the back corners. That was a two-man job, so just got some help on that one. And now that we're in place, we're tightening them back up again at the front. Obviously when you put something so nice like this back together, you want it to have all its lines looking beautiful. We don't want any gaps showing. So it's that attention to detail that they've done in these machines that we want to make sure comes back in the finished product afterwards. So now we can pop the top back on the machine. And there was that one screw which is a little bit longer, and that was the one that went straight through and held the CPU brain in place. So I'm going to pop that one in now, and hopefully it all lines up nicely. Give a bit of a dust off before we pop the top back on. Make it look nice and pretty. Now this top grate only goes in one way and you can see it's the wrong shape there. So pop it around the other side. And this can be a little bit tight, so just take your time. You don't want to scratch your paint when you're popping it in. There we go. So that's all ready to go. We just need to put our drip tray back in place, which we're going to go put it into the trailer and show you how it fits in there. Okay. So we've cut our hole in the bench and we've popped our water braided hose in. We're going to pop our drain hose in. Pop the machine down, and we're just going to feed that waste all the way through. There we go. And that's the beauty about this being able to come off. We can push it back on nicely, pop our tray in place, and we're ready to go. So all we're going to do is fit the waste hose into a little spigot that's under your drain with a hose clamp, and that hose clamp will hold it in tight and you'll always be able to drain. And we've got the other braided hose which is going to go into a T-piece under your water supply. So it's quite an easy process from there. So the other thing you have to consider when connecting to a mains water tap is how much pressure can the machine hold. So you want to put in place a 350 kPa pressure limiting valve. And what that's going to do is make sure that the water, when you connect it to your tap fitting, is coming through, and then it's regulated pressure that the machine can handle. We're just going to get a brass fitting and join the two together, and then when we turn on the mains tap, it means the machine's always going to be able to handle about 3 bar of pressure. And that pump will then take that 3 bar and add to it to give you 9 bar pressure at the head in this machine. So a lot of people will do this and install it, not put a pressure limiting valve on, but it's a bit like being in a rowboat that has a motor. And when every time, because you're moving along and stroking, you don't really get any effect. and it can really affect your pump as well. So highly recommend your pressure limiting valve. And you can put that either side of your water filter as well, so either on the inlet of your water filter or on the outlet of your water filter. And why would you do either one of those? It depends on what your filter bracket can handle. If it's not rated very heavy, you go buy a cheap one, it's not going to be able to handle that mains pressure, so definitely have your water filter coming out after your pressure limiting valve. Anyway, that's a hot little tip. I hope you've enjoyed how to install the plumbing kit into a Marzocco Linea Mini. They're a beautiful machine. Running it this way is just going to make sure that you can just enjoy beautiful coffee whenever you like and never have to worry about filling your tanks or worried about the water level in the machine. And you know the water that's going in is filtered and of great quality to add to the beautiful espresso you're going to put through. Thanks very much. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure you shoot us a comment. If you've got any questions on the install, hit the like button and the little bell up top. If you subscribe, that's going to get you notified when we put up a new video. Have a great day. Cheers.